everybody. You're listening to and possibly watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or as I said, possibly stream in. We're only 2 men strong tonight because our brother Caleb had kind of a hectic trip back from his vacation in Greece. So he needed the time to decompress and get caught up. So with that, and given that neither of us, I don't think, we haven't confirmed this with you, Steve, but I don't think you've gotten your most recent DCBS box yet.
Oh, no,
not
at all.
So those haven't arrived. So given that circumstance, given that we were in a bit of upheaval with what happened to Caleb, we decided we're going to do something a little different for this episode. Now, if you know Steve's other work, his extracurricular activity as a podcaster for another concern, which is the Bear Cave of Terror, and we have stuff to talk about that as well. I thought, well, maybe let's be like a little bear cave-ish right now. We've entered Halloween month, and let's talk about horror movies that were based on comic books. Now, we're just going to do English language comic books. If it went beyond that, of course, there's a lot of anime that was based on manga. Manga, Jesus Christ, that's so bad. Manga. And, we're also not going to be talking about works that are based on European comics like Dylan Dog. Oh, my God. Boy, did New Jersey come out there. Dylan Dog. All right. But we have a bunch of films that we're going to get through, and we're basically going to cover like everything that's been a theatrical release. We're not going to talk about every film in depth. Some of them we haven't seen, but we just are going to go through the history and talk about what we know about the films that we saw and enjoyed and some that we didn't enjoy, and I hope you enjoy this hour to 90 minutes that we're going to go through this cinematic journey with you. So how has the last 2 weeks been for you, Steve?
It's been pretty good. As you mentioned, I am doing the sort of side podcast to this. It's a Comic Book Bears Presents Bear Cave of Terror, and I've had several more episodes that I've recorded since then. And we're putting them out weekly. We're putting them out on Sundays. So if you're interested in seeing a bunch of really great guest hosts, including this gentleman over here,
point the other way. Point the other way.
Or this way.
Yeah, there we go.
I mean, on my screen, it's this way. So it's on Bill's screen, I point over here. On my screen, I point over here. But basically, I'll have a guest host on. They come in and they talk about, a particular movie that they absolutely love, and then I watch it and also do a lot of research, try to get some cool facts and stuff to talk about with the behind the scenes. So but that's been what I've been working on the past couple of weeks. Work's been kind of crazy because we're doing some crazy stuff is happening corporate wise. That's been my life. How about yours?
Well, in the time since we've been together, which was 2 weeks, I went to my first bear event in ages. And if you can see this here, you probably won't be able to see it, but it was the Rehoboth Beach Bears in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. I saw a lot of friends I haven't seen in a long time. I met a lot of people who've only been an online presence in my life. So it was a really good time, and I really want to do it again. I really, really want to do it again. And then the next weekend, AC/DC were playing in the area. So I saw them at this great venue in Bensalem, PA called the Broken Goblet. Just fantastic venue.
Oh, cool.
And then I couldn't see them the next night because I was seeing Elbow in Philadelphia, and they were great as well. But I did spend the day with some of the members shopping in New Jersey, and one of them is one of my geek heads. So I had a good a couple of weeks. Same situation with you. Very, very busy at work until today. Today was the first day in like 2.5 months where it wasn't insane.
Mhm.
There's a new project that's amping up, and then I also have my attendance at Out and Equal, the LGBT
Right.
corporate conference in Seattle, which will be uh, week after next, and then next week I'll be going to 2 days of New York Comic Con. So I have plenty of stuff going on, and
Oh, yeah.
this weekend I have 2 concerts. Yeah, so it's I've been busy. Yeah.
You've been busy, and you still got some busy coming up, which
Yeah.
is pretty good, and especially that New York Comic Con.
Mhm.
That's going to be pretty exciting. I know that Baltimore Comic Con is coming up later this month.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think either of us are going to be able to go to that one.
No.
But yeah, the New
unless
York,
unless things like there's a seismic shift,
yeah,
we're not going.
some miracles happen.
And it's a
I
shame because
can't.
we both love
Yeah,
that show.
I
We both
know,
love
I
that
know.
show. And it's like,
I
and
look
I
forward to
know
that.
you've gone through this. It's like been the last 2 weeks. Are you going to Baltimore Comic Con? Are you going to Baltimore
Yes.
Comic Con? No, you're going to Baltimore Comic Con. And it's a
Yeah.
shame because it's a con we really like. If it was up to me and a bank account that was 7 times the size, I'd probably be at a con every other week. You know,
Yeah.
every
Oh,
other week.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Plus, one of the best things about going to a con, like other than I know you find a lot of great stuff when you go bin diving. I mean, there's
Mhm.
always something that you come out with that's a pretty cool find. Um, and this last year, at Heroes Con this last summer, I kind of joined you in that crusade of looking for some interesting stuff. But one of my favorite parts is actually getting to see people, and
Yeah.
getting to be on panels, or getting to watch panels, and
Mhm.
listen to some really great creators talk, and getting to see some old friends, and
Yeah.
hang out by somebody's table, and steal their focus for a couple hours.
Mhm.
um, but that's just a lot of fun, and I'm gonna miss not being at Baltimore this year. But the cool thing is, I know that I'm going to be living vicariously through you while you're at New York Comic Con, which I've only been to once,
Mhm.
and I know you've been to several times. But yeah, I'm
Yeah, it's
definitely going
probably
to
the
be
con I've been to the
riding
most.
along
It
spiritually.
probably is I've been to every New York Comic Con except the first two.
Yeah.
So it's been a while. The best was the first time I went, and that's when it was much smaller,
Mm.
and they had the con going at the same time in the Javits as there was a convention of Methodist choirs, and that was really cool. Like that was,
Uh,
I mean,
wow.
just think of the look of these like Midwesterners, prim and proper, and there's like, some dude, with like his ass hanging out for some costume. It was cool. It was really cool.
All these people
Yeah.
walking by with spandex and no dance belts.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
It was very cool. But
That's
we
wild.
doing that. I'm getting older, and I don't know how many years I have left
Mm.
with convention going. Maybe in a scooter. Maybe that'll help.
Hover
But
around.
yeah, I will be at New York Comic Con. I will be staying in Jersey City
Mm.
because I had to use my points, or else like I lost everything with the Hilton's rewards program. I mostly
Jeez.
get like Bonvoy with Marriott, but I did have some Hilton stuff, and it was like either you use these points or
They're
you
going
lose
away.
everything. So I was like, all right, I'm staying in Jersey City for one night. So, and that'll be nice, not going back and forth to home. Um,
Yeah.
it'd still be a little bit of travel, but not crazy. So that's next week. So we won't be together in 2 weeks, probably in 3 weeks. We got to talk about
Mm.
this.
Yeah.
But the next time we'll do a CBB show. But for this show, we're not talking about comic books in the traditional funny book form. We are talking about comic book films, specifically comic book horror films.
Yeah.
And this was an interesting exercise because I think we both learned a lot about the history of
Yeah.
comic book horror films, and that it was there's not a lot, but there are some very important ones,
Yeah.
and um and in the case of two particular British films, very early cinematic films based on comic book properties.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons that we picked horror movies, of course, we're in spooky season. We're going to talk about
All right,
horror
let's
comics, movies.
just do it to get out of the way. Spooky Halloween.
Spooky Halloween,
Okay.
everybody. Woo. Anyway,
That's a salute to another podcast.
yes, and we love them. But yeah, I this was really cool because there are some movies that have come out that are are comic book films, but a lot of people don't necessarily equate them to comic books because maybe the film itself just became so popular mainstream, and before the glut of superhero movies, that people just didn't really think of it in that context.
Yeah.
And or comic book related movies, especially if they're not overtly comic booky seeming. And there are a couple of those that came out between the 90s and the 2000s where you're like, oh, that was based on a comic? Huh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And some of these,
the early 2000s, particularly the early 2000s.
There's a lot of those interesting
and also
ones.
there's a lot of films that have a foot in horror and a foot in superheroes.
Absolutely.
Again, there's maybe situations where the cinematic experience may be less horror based, but where the character came from certainly was from a horror based comic. So
yeah,
I'm talking about those. Yeah.
And I just I had a lot of fun looking these up, and some of them obviously I've seen and I love them.
Yeah.
But some I was just a little like, oh yeah,
there's a couple I have
no idea.
not seen. I have not seen. Yeah.
And one of the things that we did sort of talk about, and Bill already mentioned this, we are really only looking at the ones that got a theatrical release. Like, we might mention the ones that kind of like got a little fleeting appearance in like 2 theaters in LA,
especially with some of the franchises we're talking about. They did have a size, at least 2 of them had sizable amounts of video, direct to video release, which is kind of an antiquated term, but still fits for what we're talking about. Yeah.
Now I think you can just say direct to streaming. But but that's not always a good way of talking about it too, because some of them do come out still in physical media at the same time. So, but especially lately, there was one release, at least one release last year that I was really looking forward to. That definitely was a straight to streaming, and unfortunately, so did not get a lot of views. It did hit some theaters somewhere in the world, but definitely didn't make much money or have a lot of people see it. So, but so Bill, what or where or when should we start? Like, what's a good starting place for this?
We should start way back in 1972 or 1973.
72 and 3.
72 and 3. No, yes, it's 72 was the first one.
So let me see if I can pull up those posters while you chat for a second. Let's vamp.
I'm gonna vamp. So we're talking about films that are from 72 and 73 respectively. There is a lot of connected tissue between the 2 of them, and they are based on comics from the 1950s. So, and it's an interesting situation because these are both British made films, but distinctly American in terms of the subject material, in terms of the core material. So, do you have things queued up? Because I think it's going to surprise some people that these films even exist.
Yeah.
So the first one we're going to be talking about is Tales from the Crypt. Yes, that's a familiar name. Originally the title of one of the EC Comics horror anthologies that came out in the 1950s. And Hammer Films' big competitor in Britain was Amicus Films. And they put this film together. There is a crypt keeper. He's much more genteel than than the one that you may be used to from the television series. But there is a crypt keeper that gathers together individuals to talk about some stories that happened. And again, one of the hallmarks of the EC Comics was the O. Henry twist at the end, and this film definitely did not disappoint in that. So why don't you give us some basics about Tales from the Crypt from 1972?
Well, I actually, I really love this movie, and I actually did this. I do every year for the past. This is now the third year. I do a 31 days of horror movies, and this was my October 2nd movie as well. So it's very fresh in my mind. They had, I believe, they had basis on 5 different stories from 3 different EC comics. So, of course, Tales from the Crypt, but also Vault of Horror and Haunt of Fear, which I think is probably one of the lesser known ones. But each of these stories did appear in one of those comics back in the 50s, all written from, Al Feldstein, Johnny Craig, Bill Gaines. I mean, they were all.
Yeah. Johnny Craig was an artist. He wasn't a writer.
Well, but he was one of the co-creators that was credited on this. And so the stories themselves are revamped for, a 1970s audience. And although like the subject matter is generally is pretty American, it's been tweaked a little bit so that it makes a little bit more sense for, a British audience. But this had a little bit more of an international appeal. Obviously, this is an American property, Tales from the Crypt, and so it did have a bit of a following over here as well when it was released. And like Bill had said, you have 5 random people that are drawn into this this underground crypt on a tour of some ancient catacombs from the time of Henry VIII. And they get waylaid a bit and end up in this room where Sir Ralph Richardson, playing the Crypt Keeper, brings them up one by one to basically live a story that details why they're there. And that just kind of puts that person, back into a perspective of and reenacting one of each of these tales from the comics. Probably the most recognizable story from this was the Joan Collins one, because they actually redid that. I think more than once in later episodes of Tales from the Crypt when it was on TV back, down in the late 80s, early 90s. But also I think in another anthology film that was completely unrelated. And that was the one where she kills her husband on Christmas Eve. And over the radio, the announcer says, to look out because there is an escaped mental patient, a murderous individual dressed up as Santa Claus. And lo and behold, he shows up at her house. And she can't call the cops because she's just murdered her hubby and his body's still not hidden there. So she has to figure out how to hide the body, but also keep the house safe from this crazed, Santa Claus. Of course, the big twist here is that her little girl is so excited to see Santa, sees him through the window and opens the door for him. And of course, he comes in and strangles poor Joan Collins. But there's some other really fantastic stories in here. One of them, and Bill, I know that the relationship between the two gentlemen in the story featuring Peter Cushing as Mr. Grimsdyke, the poor Mr. Grimsdyke, are supposed to be a father and son. But honestly, the relationship really comes across as like sugar daddy and his bitchy queen younger boyfriend.
But
I know, but
but sometimes you're just looking for stuff. Yeah,
exactly. But it's also very.
This one. It felt like there was a decent amount of ammunition.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe this neighborhood is going to pot because of
property values are going so far down because of this awful. He's a dustman. Yeah.
He's a dustman. He gives toys to children and he has dogs.
Children enjoy it. Yeah.
But Peter Cushing, of course, making a great turn in this one as the poor victim turned, supernatural
Mhm.
spirit of
And
vengeance
a
at the end of
part,
the story.
if you read about this, a part he lobbied for. He
Really?
was offered another role, and he was adamant that because most of the characters he played were posh, and
Yeah.
he was adamant about which role that he wanted in this one. It's an
I'm glad he
interesting
did. He did a
backstory
great
with that.
job.
Yep.
He was fascinating as this, as this
Yeah.
poor older man who was just, still in love with his, dead wife, and
Mhm.
just cared so much about his neighborhood and all of that. And it was just really, it was really sad
Yeah.
to see what happened to him. Of course, he he was able to share the comeuppance with
Yeah.
with the person responsible for his downfall. But yeah, I mean, it just like most Tales from the Crypt stories, the people who are bad are punished, usually in a very twisty, ironic way. And of course, the reveal at the end is that they're all dead, and off they are in hell.
You
And
didn't have to
basically,
spoil that for them. You didn't have to spoil
oh,
it for
that's
people.
it's not spoiling anything.
Right?
This movie is
Yeah.
50 years old,
But
so.
this was one of the films that I watched very recently in prep for tonight.
Yeah.
And one thing that I really appreciated is the source material, the EC comics from the 50s. That's something I find distinctly American. It's
Yes.
American locales, American conflicts, American language, and how well this translated across the sea, because this
Hmm.
is a very British film. These are very British treatments of the story, that there's a universality to these stories, to this
Hmm.
type of horror story. And that's something I really appreciated. And I also think with people that are, modern viewers, we mentioned two actors in Joan Collins and Peter Cushing. These are very familiar names to genre, the people who watch genre films.
Hmm.
This, and then the next one that we're going to talk about, which I'm not sure if you have watched, but
I
I have.
haven't. Yeah.
Okay. I have a few things to say about what is, the spiritual sequel, I would say, to
Hmm.
this, which is, and if you can bring up that poster there, The Vault of Horror. Again, another film from Amicus Studios, which
Hmm.
came out the following year in 1973. Same format, apart from the absence of a host. Um, and I forget what the name of the vault. There was a name for the
Vault Dweller or
vault
something,
dweller or
like,
something.
not Vault
Uh,
Dwellers.
a-
Yeah, that's something else.
anyway,
That's Fallout. But
um,
yeah.
but just like the Tales from the Crypt film, this featured 5 stories, again, all based on stories from EC Comics. And I think in this particular one, it was even more so um, a situation where they were pulling stories from books that were not Vault of Horror.
Yeah,
And
it was
again,
mostly
some of
Tales from the
that was
Crypt. And
because, and at the time in the 1970s, the uh, it's not like it is today where they have these nice bound volumes of archives. There were a few paperbacks that were easily available that reprinted it, and that was it. So, with these stories, I think 4 of them were actually from Tales from the Crypt, and one was from Two Fisted Tales. Um,
Shock suspense
Shock
stories.
suspense stories. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
So
same
this
difference.
is, as I said, very much a spiritual sequel. The conceit, instead of what we had with the visitation to a crypt, the vault was actually a sub basement in an office building.
Hmm.
And what a cool device of having the I hate saying it, but protagonists of the 5 stories enter into the elevator that goes down. It's such a cool device. And also with Vault of Horror, there's one amazing jump scare. One amazing jump scare, which before they even had the term jump scare, they employed it there. Um,
Cool.
and there's some cool, there's some very cool stories. My favorite one was the one with Terry Thomas and Glynis Johns. where he has married in middle age, and he's a neat freak. And what happens when you marry somebody and the other person isn't a neat freak and isn't
Hmm.
bound by regimented times and customs, and how far that can go. There also is a very cool story about a brother um, and sister and a dispute over inheritance. And the actor and actress playing those characters are brother and sister in real life, uh,
Oh.
which gives it just such a cool feel, especially with what happens. uh, and also, this is a film. This is one of the films from Tom Baker. Probably before the reboot, the most famous Doctor Who, and seeing
Mm-hmm.
him in a different context. In his story, which also includes Denholm Elliott from Raiders of the Lost Ark and the other Indiana Jones films. Again, some familiar names even for people today. And again, I was just so impressed with how these stories traveled, because again, with this film, distinctly British,
Mm-hmm.
distinctly British. And I think you're going to love it. I actually liked the overall, I liked Vault of Horror more than I liked Tales from the Crypt.
Interesting. Well, I think with Tales from the Crypt, I was familiar with a couple of the stories already. I
Mhm,
had either read them or seen them, redone in later
mhm.
years with different casts.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one I did actually find out that it was marketed in some places as Tales from the Crypt 2.
Yes. Yes.
So sometimes even more than a spiritual sequel, it was like pushed as
Yeah.
like an actual sequel, even though it's an anthology and really, there's no
Yeah.
returning cast necessarily.
Right.
So
And also, in terms of something that we see today with the phenomenon of the PG-13 horror film, both of these had PG ratings, but that was only due to some scenes being cut for this
mm,
one. And the print that's most easily available now is the uncut version with the two scenes that were problematic and did get cut, kind of sanitized a little bit for the
mm,
original US release. So, but
oh,
good
neat.
stuff, really good stuff.
Cool. I'll definitely. I can't wait to check this one out. I'll put it on my list to watch at some point. Maybe not this month, because this
Yeah,
month my card is full. But
yeah.
but I will put it on for something else. But yeah, but these weren't the last of the Tales from the Crypt movies. There were actually two more, at least theatrically
Theatricals, yeah.
released ones. Of course, they came after the TV series. So the TV series, of course, came out in the late 80s. I think it was like 1989 or 1990 that the TV show started,
I I feel like
or
it's
maybe a little
earlier
bit.
than that. I feel like it might be 88.
It could be.
I
It,
think
it
I
was.
was
I
still
know
in
it was late
college when those.
80s,
Yeah.
and it
Um,
lasted for a good chunk of time. I think it was like
yeah,
9 seasons altogether. But
yeah.
um,
And even
that
led to
sort
an
of
animated series.
yes,
Yeah.
I have no idea why they made it to a cartoon, but the I think the character of that crypt keeper became a pretty big cultural phenomenon. So
Yeah.
people wanted to see more of him and see more of what they could do with this franchise. So of course, the show was very popular. It was premium cable. It was uh, I wouldn't say big budget, but it was competently made,
Yeah.
and they didn't
Big
really
names
look cheap.
associated with it,
Exactly, lots of directors and writers and
Zemeckis
actors
and
would be on
Spielberg, and
there.
yeah, yep.
So in the mid '90s, they decided, hey, maybe we can actually make some big screen money from this. And they decided to do. I think they'd actually already had the plans for the two movies, but they put out the first one, and that was Tales from the Crypt presents Demon Knight. Um, and this one I actually did see in the movie theater. I was probably, was it 96 that it came out?
Let me check
95,
my list
96.
here. I already screwed up with 72 and 73.
Oh,
It was 1995, with
95.
with the next
So
one coming in 1996.
yes, so I saw this in the theater. I was a teenager, but I was still able to get in. I mean, I don't think they were as strict, in the '90s as much. But yeah, I mean, this was a lot of fun. It had a young Jada Pinkett Smith, or Jada Pinkett at the time,
Mhm.
um, as sort of our main heroine here, and it takes place in a hotel, sort of in the middle of nowhere, sort of like a flop house almost, where the titular demon knight arrives, and essentially it's his burden, his task to stop demons from taking over the world. And
Mhm.
he's been able to fight them for so long, but of course he's nearing the end of his battle. And the head demon shows up. I believe it's Billy Zane who plays him,
Mhm.
to get into this house, and of course, be able to kill the demon knight and take over. And Jada Pinkett ends up taking the mantle
Mhm.
eventually in the film. So it's fun. I wouldn't say it's really ironic and twisty, which makes it a little bit different from what you would expect in a Tales from the Crypt
Yeah.
movie.
But I think that shortened vignette
Hmm.
works for that conceit much better than something
Like feature
extended
length.
as a full film. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's harder to pull that off
Yeah.
when you have that much bandwidth to tell a story. Yeah.
Which it was fun. There's some fun moments.
Yeah.
There
We
was
got
some
a lot
jump
of films to
scares.
go through, Steve. So,
Yeah,
let's get going.
absolutely. And then, of course, the next one was Bordello of Blood in '96, starring everybody's favorite jerk, Dennis Miller. Um, this was about vampires.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
Right.
It did not do well. It was not
A
very
lot of
popular.
vampires, though. We got a lot of vampires. Here, I'm
A
looking.
lot of vampires.
A lot of
Vampires make
vampires.
for
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
movies. They make for a
Yeah.
good box office draw usually.
Yeah.
Not so much in this one, but.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those were like the big four Tales from the Crypt films. Now there hasn't been one since then
Yeah.
that's been released in the movie theaters. So, um, I don't know.
It's a recognizable name. I'm sure at some point we'll get something else.
I hope so. But I part of me thinks that mantle's kind of been taken over by the Creep Show series.
Possibly, but
Yeah,
things go in cycles.
exactly. Yeah. So. Which is really funny because Creepshow is one of those things where it started out as a movie pretending to be based on a comic book and now is a comic book.
Yeah.
And also a series of TV shows.
Series of stuff,
Yeah,
yeah.
everything. So, but yeah, so like, I mean, that's starting off with the oldest. Now, we did have something that came out in the 80s.
Yes, we did. And actually, there was 2 films that came out, and this is the first of the ones that we're going to be talking about. That's a big 2 property.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're talking about in terms of what we're talking about first is 1982 saw the cinematic debut of Swamp Thing from DC Comics in a film directed by Wes Craven. And do you have a video? Do you have an image for that there?
I do, and it was disappeared for a second, but I've gotten it
Okay.
back. There we go.
While you're waiting, I can show off my home copy. This is on DVD. I have not gotten an upgrade to Blu-ray because they're kind of the Swamp Thing came out from boutique labels, first from Olive and then from or maybe Shout Factory first, and then the current one. I forget what the imprint is, but they're not cheap.
No.
But I do have the standard MGM DVD of Swamp Thing, and it deviates a little bit from the comic book in terms of particularly Abby Cable in this version is Alice Cable, played by Adrienne Barbeau, who's instead of merely being the niece of the principal villain Anton Arcane, she's actually a government agent, or in some of the materials that they put the actual materials when they released this film, a sexy government agent.
She is a sexy government agent.
Yeah. Now I assume you've seen this.
I have. It's been a while, but yeah, I remember watching this. I think the interesting thing is that I had been a big fan of the TV series that was running on USA in the early '90s, because it was actually the #1 show on USA at the time. and they put a lot of emphasis on it. It ran for 70 plus episodes or something like that.
Yeah, 4
But
seasons.
oh yeah,
4 seasons.
but they actually had on the Sci-Fi Channel. They did show Swamp Thing, and I think Swamp because I didn't have a lot of the premium cable channels. I usually had to wait until it was on commercial TV. But on Sci-Fi Channel, they played Swamp Thing, and I'm talking SCIFI channel, so it's that old. They played the first one. I did not see the second one.
Okay.
The Return of the Swamp Thing. But this one was interesting because if you watch the TV show, it's the exact same actor or stunt actor who plays the Swamp Thing, Dick Durock.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's an interesting through line is that he
Yeah.
played it through both of the movies as
Yeah.
well as through the whole TV show.
And he's since passed away. And if you read about him, he sounds like one of these people that no one had a bad word to say about him.
No.
Like nobody had a bad word. That he was a pleasure to work with. He had that suit on in some very, very hot circumstances filming. And I think this was filmed in Georgia. The TV series was definitely filmed in Orlando at the studios that
Universal
we were
Studios,
operating at
yeah.
the time. And it couldn't have been easy, but one good thing about Swamp Thing is it was the first film from Bat Films, which was Benjamin Melnicker and Michael Uslan. And this was in 82, and 7 years later they hit gold with Batman. Yeah, and it was just kind of amazing that Swamp Thing beat Batman to the punch in terms of being a theatrical property. You had mentioned the return of Swamp Thing, and
Yeah.
I do have a DVD of that from the first film. Only Louis Jourdan and Dick Durock return. The femme fatale in this one is Heather Locklear.
Yeah.
Okay. After her stint on TJ Hooker and before Melrose Place. And this one is played much more for laughs.
Yeah,
This one is
that's what I
played much
heard.
more for laughs. So if you are going to watch this one, I might suggest going to the Riff Tracks version. And yes,
Ooh.
this is on home video. You can get this from the Riff Tracks website and from the Kickstarter. I think you can still get it from there.
I am a fan of Riff Tracks and
Yeah.
MS23K, as you can tell from my Gizmoplex cup. So yes, that sounds like a plan to me.
So, and also, I think it's nice to talk about Swamp Thing because they are planning on a Swamp Thing film with James Gunn's new DC Studios at some point.
And I really hope they can do it justice because there's so much great lore and just there's so much creativity that goes into
it's such a
adventure like
lyrical story. I know that sounds lofty using a term like that, but it really is. I know, especially given what Alan Moore injected into the mythos. And neither of these films, this one even more so than the first one, it's not the Swamp Thing that you want to see, but it's something. And especially for the 80s where there was nothing happening, it was nice to have that. So
to see, I mean, what was it like? For because this came out in 82, so I'm presuming that you may have been aware of it. You would have been what?
Oh yeah, I did see it in the movie theaters. It was one of those things where I had to con people to go with it. Because my best friend Stu is not big on horror films, so I had it I forget what film it was, but I said, look, if you want to see that, I'll go see that with you. And I think it was My Bodyguard or something. No, it was one of those stupid teen movies.
Officer and Gentleman.
And I said, I'll see that, but let's see Swamp Thing this week. Return of the Swamp Thing came and went so quickly in the theaters that I can't imagine it lasted more than a week. I think in the New York market it only played 2 theaters, so that was almost like a direct to video. But Swamp Thing was like a legit, the 82 film was a legit theatrical release. And
and also I think the fact that it was directed by Wes Craven gave it a little bit more oomph, I
Yeah,
think.
I mean, I think so, but I think only in the horror genre. I think,
Maybe.
when he did hit the Friday the 13th, that real I'm sorry, Nightmare on Elm Street. I
Yeah,
think that's
in
really when
84,
he
yeah.
solidified his position as a as a mainstream director. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I absolutely loved I love the comic. I even love the New 52, like everything they've done since New 52. They did some really wonderful things with the Swamp Thing mythos that continues to today.
Yeah.
Um, but I was impressed with the TV series that came out. It was the first series released for the
All right,
DC
dude.
Infinite.
You should watch that again. The DC. Okay.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
DC, the
I
new
was gonna
one.
say, as somebody
Oh,
who fairly in the last few years watched all of the USA Network.
no. It was
Boy,
It
oh
was very
boy,
popular at the time, but
oh
right now, if you were
boy,
watching it again, absolutely not.
oh
I have attempted to
boy, oh boy, oh
rewatch
boy, oh boy,
episodes, and I'm like, what?
oh boy. Okay,
It's
that's all I'll say is oh boy. All right, well, we're moving from Swamp Thing and DC Comics to an independent and something quintessentially independent.
Mhm.
So we move on to 1994 and The Crow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So The Crow, I this is one of those things that I think because I had started reading comics, in 1990, really
yeah,
89, 90, I was aware of The Crow as a comic book. James O'Barr, his property was actually it was pretty popular
yeah,
indie wise, and it was something that I had actually heard of. I had seen a couple issues, never could buy anything because it flew off the shelves or was really
yeah,
expensive to buy.
yeah,
Um, but I was super excited for it when I heard that they were turning into a film. And unfortunately, it had a lot of other publicity around the release of this film that overshadowed the story. And that was more what happened to Brandon Lee um, during the filming of it. So that I think, I mean, it helped, I think, promote the film.
mhm,
It's an unfortunate thing, but it did raise the profile of something that could have been a relatively you know, middle of the road performer otherwise, because a lot of people had heard about The Crow as a
mhm.
property. But this kind of, that really sad, tragic news of his death while filming, um, I think pushed it up and allowed more people to be aware of it and to see it
Yeah,
and give it the popularity, give it the, give it the visibility that it needed
yeah.
at the time.
So it's based on James O'Barr's work. It's based in like literally in tragedy. It was his way of working through the death of his girlfriend.
Yeah.
Um, and that that mentality follows it in every incarnation that they've had since then. I tried watching this in preparation for this episode. I tried watching this again. It has a very distinctive chaotic editing style. As we were talking about before we started, that most likely was because they had a very limited amount of Brandon Lee footage, and that mechanism may have been a way to craft something close to a full narrative. I don't think it's held up well. It feels very 1994.
Mm.
And with that, the film's dark, and I don't mean that in terms of the subject matter. Of course, that's in the subject matter, but literally, it's dark. It's almost every scene is at night, and there's certain scenes where it's very hard to tell what's going on.
Yeah.
You have to listen very carefully to get a sense of where they are and who these people are because the lighting doesn't help.
No.
Um, One thing I will say though that as one thing on points in terms of 1994, a stunning soundtrack, a
This soundtrack,
fantastic soundtrack. Yeah,
this was my favorite album for several years. Like just the
yeah,
soundtrack of this was so every track, almost every track was just a massive, perfect, you know, piece in this film. But it's definitely something that I think probably held up a lot better
Yeah.
than the film.
And
Is
let me
the
just
music.
briefly go through some of the artists that are on the soundtrack: The Cure,
Sure.
Stone Temple Pilots, Nine Inch Nails, Rage Against the Machine, Violent Femmes, Rollins Band, Helmet, Pantera, the Jesus and Mary Chain, and then beautifully tying it together somehow, a beautiful track by Jane Siberry,
Yeah,
Canadian singer-songwriter.
can't cry all the
Um,
time. It,
yeah,
the,
really
it's
good
just,
soundtrack. Yeah.
and the soundtrack is so well produced. Like every
Yeah.
track leads into the like. It's just, I don't know. It's one of those perfect soundtrack albums
Yeah.
that, again, I think outshines the film
In
for
some
better or worse.
capacity, yeah. But I
Yeah.
also think that, um, again, I was only able to get through about half an hour of the film,
Hmm.
and they use the soundtrack to bridge scenes, and it's very effective.
Oh yeah.
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 So The Crow, in and of itself, was a franchise. There was, in 1996, a sequel.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you have the photo ready for that, and that's City of Angels.
Yep.
And well, uh, I I saw this movie. I saw it in the movie theaters. If
Hmm.
you put a gun to my head and told me to recite the plot, I'd be in real trouble. If you put a
I
gun to my head
mean,
and say, "I'm gonna blow your brains out unless you can recite the plot to this Crow movie," I don't remember a thing about this movie.
honestly, I the only thing I do remember about this movie is it is very similar to the first one in
Okay.
the plot, the way that it's laid out. I think it's essentially in this one, it's the young street urchin, the girl that he befriends in the first movie. She gets kidnapped in this one, and I think that that's kind of the motivation for him to go on a killing spree against, the drug lords who are running the city. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Iggy Pop's in it.
Yeah, and this was one I was actually really looking forward to because
Yeah,
the person who directed this was Tim Pope, who is a
yeah.
fantastic music video director, and this was
Hmm.
also a very early script from David S. Goyer, who
Yeah.
is integral to the history of comic books and comic books and film. Um,
Hmm.
he has mentioned that they whittled his script down to almost nothing that he found recognizable. Um,
Yeah.
and this good, I mean, Iggy Pop's in it. Thomas Jane is in it.
That was Jane. Yeah.
You should like it just on that basis. And I tell you, I don't remember a damn thing about this.
Yeah. It's unfortunate too because it did have the elements of something
Yeah,
that could have been a good follow-up to the
yeah,
first movie. But I think it has the problem that Eric Mabius isn't Brandon Lee, and I think having a new person, like clearly a new person stepping into that role.
hmm,
Obviously, you couldn't have Brandon Lee again, but I think that was probably part of the the lack of appeal afterwards. Like it didn't stick around. It didn't become a cult hit as much as the first one.
hmm.
And then that, of course, snowballed because it's a different actor in every subsequent movie. Um, and just, yeah, it doesn't hold up, which is too bad. And
Yeah,
so there were two sequels to this that were more or less straight to video. I do have a couple images here: The Crow Salvation, and then The Crow Wicked Prayer with Edward Furlong as the Crow.
yeah.
Um,
And that's Edward
yeah,
Furlong at peak like addiction.
yeah,
It's really. I did watch this one a few years ago, and it's ooh.
yeah. Yeah,
And but at the same token, neither of these two had very big budgets,
no,
and they
no.
did what they could.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that's the biggest lesson here is that people were kind of hoping that it would be a long running franchise and could
mhm.
just print money.
And I think it does have the capacity. I think it's kind of
Yeah,
tailor made for episodic television. You know,
yeah, and
in
it
the way
did.
that
It was
Batman
made into a
is,
TV show.
you just put this character in a problematic crime-ridden city,
Yeah,
and stories kind of write themselves.
absolutely.
So maybe at some point that they'll get the balance right with it, because the,
Yeah,
the potential's there. The
yeah, the
potential
potential's there.
is certainly there.
And it did last. It was a TV series for a year, 98 to 99, I think it was, with Mark Dacascos as the Crow. But they did remake it very recently. This came out last year. I saw it. No, I didn't enjoy it, and and I'm sure that there are people who liked it. It did have much better editing, I should say, than the first one. It was a lot more, the visuals were much more updated. It was interesting, but I didn't really care about the characters, unfortunately. So it was just so dark and dreary, but nobody really was redeemable in it, unfortunately. And which is really sad to say, because again, the subject matter is, he's paying for other sins so that he can, redeem himself, but also take revenge. So it's sort of like, I'm taking revenge, which is in itself is an act of sin or evil, but I'm doing it because my love has brought me back, essentially, to do this and to redeem myself by revenging her, my innocent girlfriend's death. But it just didn't work.
Yeah.
So
and in this one, this was Bill Skarsgård.
It was
the Crow in this.
Yeah, and again, he wasn't bad. It just didn't really work, unfortunately. So, and I think it's just the formula is difficult to pull off. Yeah. And I think if they can find somebody who's a good director, a good script.
Yeah, I don't like this guy as a director. I have not liked any of the films that he's made. Rupert Sanders. Sorry. Maybe someday he'll knock one out of the park, but there's something kind of hackish.
He's still learning. He's still there. He'll find that formula. He'll find it. It'll work for him someday. But this unfortunately is not.
Oh, Snow White and the Hunts. Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're continuing our journey, and you cannot talk about comic books in the 90s without talking about Image Comics. And in 1997, we had our first film based on an Image comic, and that was Spawn.
Which I don't have the images for.
Well, that's a shame, but I do have my home video copy. And look how old this is, Steve. Look, it's a snap case.
Oh, God, those New Line snap cases.
A snap case, man, and on top of it, the disc. Do you remember when you had, like, it was widescreen on one side and full screen on the other? Yeah, baby. Oof. Okay.
When they gave you the choice.
Okay.
Oh man, Spawn was one of those massive hit comics right out of the gate. I mean, that thing sold millions of copies. I think it was issue number 2 was impossible to find for a long time because everybody overordered the first one, but didn't order the second one enough.
And then 8 and then 11 for different reasons were hard to find.
Scares.
Yeah.
But the
print run was like, into the millions, they were still tough to find those.
Yeah.
And now it's funny because there's a comic book channel I follow, Mint Hunter Comics, and I've been to James's shop a couple times at this point. And one of his videos details, like, the first 50 issues are so easy to find now. After that, though, oh, baby. Anything after 50 until McFarlane returns to the book, then some of those issues are fairly easy, like the 250s or so, and then they get hard again, just because the print runs are not big.
No,
but the print runs when the thing started were astronomical.
Which, I mean, this is the longest running Image comic. I mean, I guess you could say, like, Savage Dragon.
They're kind of tied.
The other one,
Yeah,
and Savage Dragon, of course,
had breaks. So
yeah, multiple volumes for Savage Dragon. But I think the first, like, Spawn is still going on the original volume, and has had so many spin-off series since then.
Savage Dragon had the original miniseries,
issue,
and then after that, it was
the continuous one.
consistent. It's consistent.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And there were some spin-offs from that too, kind of early on. But yeah, I mean, Spawn is just one of those really interesting comic series. I have no idea what's going on now. I know there's many different Spawns that are part of that universe, and it's even crossed over with the Massive Verse, with Radiant Black and Radiant Red and all that. But yeah, it's definitely a very horror based concept. You have a main character who is killed, but comes back from the dead with the powers of hell. Essentially, he's got his semi semi conscious cape. And just general hellfire and all sorts of stuff that he can do, and of course there are very gross demons. The Violator himself is one of the most famous of them, with sort of like the clown human version that barely looks human, and then of course the really weird creature version. Just sadistic, horrible, lots of blood, lots of tearing of flesh kind of stuff. But it's got the staying power there. The film does, in a way, is able to present a lot of this imagery really well.
Yeah.
I mean, the effects were pretty cool for the time.
For the time, I think people looking at this today, like, for me, it's like, I mean, I grew up with You Will Believe a Man Can Fly. I'm impressed by any special effect. I'm okay. But I think if you do watch it, you do realize CGI has gone a long way, but they were trying to do some things more. It's not a great film. It's not a great film.
No.
One thing I think for me, where Martin Sheen is the big bad, he just comes across as such a nice guy organically that I really have a hard time buying that. So that might be a me thing. Michael J. White was Spawn. He does a fine job.
He does a good job in everything.
70% of the film you can't see his face.
Yeah.
And I think with the soundtrack, they did an interesting thing because for each of the tracks, they combine a metal or hard alternative act with an electronic act.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the best known song from the track is the one by Filter and the Crystal Method, The Trip Like I Do. It's like 12 tracks like that with combinations like that. So they didn't try to just be a Crow, soundtrack. They did, there was a kind of, novelty to it. And it kind of works on some tracks. Others feel very forced, but they did try.
Well, and it's also notable because it's a black superhero.
Yes,
again, in a costume the whole time. You don't really see his face, but also John Leguizamo as the Violator is freaking brilliant.
He does a good job.
Perfect.
Yeah,
just a perfect encapsulation of the comic character, and the makeup and everything made him look exactly how you would expect somebody walking off the page, which I thought was pretty cool. And I think that was the other thing that this movie had going for, is that it had a lot of color to it, like just bright colors. It didn't spend all its time like shadows,
any shade
red,
of
green.
red you want, you'll get it in this film.
Just a lot of
and also
fun. And I think that,
like I said at the beginning, there are the films that have a foot in superhero and a foot in horror. I think especially with the comic book, I think sometimes people forget it is a horror comic, because of some of the storylines that feel kind of disconnected from that. But there you go, Spawn. Someday they'll make another one.
Someday. I mean, they had the TV series, the cartoons. The cartoon lasted for a few seasons. It was pretty popular. Again,
the only thing with that was I have a very skewed vision of how that series went, because I was in my 20s. I was doing things people in their 20s did and wasn't watching a lot of TV. And I relied on the later DVDs, which, chop the episodes up into, a full 2.5 hour movie, essentially. So someday I would like to watch it as episodic television, because I didn't have that experience. So our journey takes us from 1997 to the following year, 1998. And I think the importance of this film cannot be stressed enough. And that is Blade.
Blade.
I got an HD version of Blade.
And I do
This
have
is
some.
a very, this is a very important film. Marvel, in terms of cinematic success, was a bust. You had Howard the Duck in 1986. You had that the Punisher film at the end of the 80s, which was almost unrecognizable from the Punisher. You had the Captain America, which may as well have been a direct to video. Then you had the Fantastic Four from Corman, which was never even released.
No.
So they didn't have a great track record, but something with Blade connected, and you don't have a Marvel Cinematic Universe without Blade. You
Oh,
just don't.
100%.
In terms of how the film was marketed, in terms of how the film was edited, in terms of how the film which is basically conceived as part of a bigger story, though the interconnectivity was still kind of siloed. But I think Blade, in terms of comic movies, is one of the most important ones out there.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Wesley Snipes, to this day, he's still asked to return as his character. And in fact, Deadpool versus Wolverine, he did. He got to return and do Blade again on the big screen for the fourth time. And this was one that actually had, a trilogy that did well.
Yeah,
obviously you could say diminishing returns.
Each film did better.
Yeah, each film did better. You could say diminishing returns in the quality of the film, but really only by the third one. The first one was great. The second one was even better.
I think
then the third
people
one.
really, again, because of this was very important for Guillermo del Toro's career.
Oh, yeah.
With Blade 2, I think people did get some disappointment in Blade Trinity, and the stories about how Blade Trinity was made. That should be a movie in and of itself.
Somebody better make a documentary.
That's
all I have
I don't
to
want
say.
a documentary. I want a docu-series on that. I want, I want. What was the movie about the making of The Godfather? The television series.
Yeah. Oh, shoot, it was on Showtime. What was the name of it?
I can't think of the name of it. That's what I want about Blade 3.
Yeah, Nacelle, if you're listening, do a whole series of the icon series for Blade. But if you could do anything on that, I would be so.
And I think it was interesting because Blade at that point was not a very well-known character.
No.
Even among comic people, was kind of a footnote at that point. And maybe that's why it worked, because people didn't have a lot of preconceptions.
It could be,
of what a character
could for sure, and
yeah,
and of course he's less superhero-y. I mean, he doesn't wear a cape. I mean his black trench coat is pretty flowy at times, but he's cool in all the right cool spots, right? He's got the shades, he's got he's got the deep voice, he's got the fangs, he's got the samurai sword. I mean, this guy is just cool. And Wesley Snipes, he brings with it that just sense of this is just a cool action actor. Like, this guy can really embody this type of character and make you believe, he's badass.
He's it's a shame that his career and his personal life, on top of that, probably didn't go in the direction he was hoping for. But there was no question at this time that he was a riveting theatrical presence. He had star quality at this point, and it's nice that there's been some rebound and that he's had fun playing this character, which by the time of Blade Trinity, for some whatever reason, whatever demons in his head, he saw as a burden more than a benefit. And even more than the return in Deadpool and Wolverine, I thought his cameos in the vampire series, the TV.
What We Do in the Shadows.
What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
Oh my god. It's just I was so happy to see that. Yeah, and it's nice that he's kind of come around and embraced it again. But we did get whatever metrics you use, 3 very good films. Blade Trinity also has, to recommend it, Dominic Purcell is sexy as fuck in that
Oh
film.
yeah. As
And
the progenitor
yeah,
vampire,
yeah,
he just
with
he walks in the room
the
and you're like, damn. But
yeah,
when you've heard what is the term, like for the deep V, the girdle of Venus, or whatever it is, like that
yeah,
perfect deep V.
yeah. And
If you're into that kind of thing.
it would have been nice if this led to a Night Stalkers franchise.
Yeah.
That certainly seemed to be the setup, maybe more out of necessity than what would have happened because of the difficulties with the director and writer David S. Goyer. There's that name again.
There's
Had
that
with
name
dealing
again.
with Snipes, but we did get a trilogy out of it. There
Yeah.
also was a follow-up TV series. You
On
don't seem to
Spike
like
TV.
it. I kind of liked it. Um, I
It
kind of liked it.
feels
Yeah,
it feels cheap to me, but I understand
yeah,
why. It wasn't
yeah,
like, it was already too expensive to produce. Like it only made it 13 episodes, and it was very expensive for
yeah.
the channel that was putting it out. Spike TV exactly, didn't have
Mhm.
the money for something like this, and yet they commissioned it
Yeah.
and produced it. And I think if it was on a different channel, like if it had been picked up by an HBO or Cinemax, or something
Yeah,
like
but
that,
I,
I
I
think it
think it
would have
was
done
kind of
better.
that was kind of made for Spike, you know.
Well, yeah, I
It
mean
was kind of. I mean, I'm not
that's why
even
they
saying
went
like
for
if it
it.
ended up somewhere. It was kind of made for Spike. And in terms of names, we also had Jeff Johns as part
Yeah,
of the
just
running crew for
wild.
that. Okay,
It's just
so
so wild.
we're moving on to two films which I don't think are very good, but I think are there's still stuff to discuss. We move on to 1997, and this is not a very familiar name, I think, for most, even diehard comic book fans. But there was a film based on the 1992 Dark Horse series Virus, and it took its name, and it was called Virus in 1997. Uh, and if you have a picture there,
Oh, I
there
do.
there is an actress who's still a very hot actress. Yes, it's Jamie Lee Curtis, and this is my widescreen. Remember, we had to make sure it was widescreen before we bought it. Uh, of
Yeah.
Virus. This concerns a and there's a lot of shared DNA with films like Alien and Species in this.
Superman 3.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks. No, I can't shake that image. And with this one, it deals with a Russian research vehicle that is contacting the Mir space station. I haven't thought of the name the Mir space station in years. Uh, and there is a technovirus that comes through the Mir space station and then goes down into this vessel. There is a tugboat that had to jettison its uninsured cargo because of a storm that they're in, a typhoon, that is captained by a character played by Donald Sutherland. And I can't bash Donald Sutherland more in this film. Lazy. He's lazy in this.
Lazy.
Uh, um, Jamie Lee Curtis is essentially the first mate. They don't really, they aren't as regimented because it's a tugboat crew, and Billy Baldwin uh, over there in the picture there is another one of the seamen, and Jamie Lee Curtis has said herself she thinks it's the worst film she's ever been in. She's fine in it. I think she's one of the few actors out there that I think, um, even if what they're in is shit, they still
Yeah.
deliver it as if they're like as if it's like Shakespeare or Ibsen. You're still getting bang for your buck from this actor. The special effects are actually pretty good. I watched this
Yeah.
today in preparation. I have not seen this since like 2000 2001 or so. But Donald Sutherland is supposed to be a British tugboat captain, but you won't be able to put your hand on Bible to that if you actually hear him in the film because Irish, and then he's British, then he's Irish again, then it's Boston, and then it's like his native Canuck, and then back to Brit. It's lazy. It's lazy. Um, there's
Wow.
also an actor who plays Squeaks, I think is the guy's name, Squeaker, and you would swear it's Lin Miranda. You know, you would swear it's him. It's a different actor who sadly passed away a couple of years ago. Um, and what should be, you know, it's definitely going for that alien trapped on a vessel
Mhm.
vibe with you know, a very formidable opponent. I can't believe they had an action figure line based on this film. Like, I can't imagine, like, hey mom, I can you get me virus toys for Christmas? I can't believe that.
I want to play with Goliath. I want to play with Goliath. I want the Jamie Lee Curtis action figure.
But I
I
I I think I do have to watch the special features on this because there is Ghost in the Machine, an original documentary, and a feature commentary with the director John Bruno, who's mostly known as a VFX guy, and actually
mm,
was one of the people that won an Academy Award for The Abyss. Um, Deleted scenes. Um, yeah,
what did they cut out?
I'm gonna have to watch this, but it's not good. It's not good.
It's it has literally been it's been 25 years since I've watched it.
Mhm.
And the only thing I remember about it is Jamie Lee Curtis because
Yeah.
she's the only good thing in it. And I absolutely agree. Like she's one of
The
those
the other
actors.
woman in it, Joanna Pakula as the Russian survivor, she's
Yeah.
good. I thought she was
Okay.
good in this too. But Billy Baldwin could have been any, you know, any matinee idol actor, and Donald
Yeah.
Sutherland is like he's so bad. It's up there with there are certain performances in comic book films that are just so awful they have to be, you know, Mia Farrow and Supergirl. I mean, I don't know what she was doing in that. And this is on that level. He's really, and he's a good actor, and that's why I feel like it's lazy. Because I think there's great Sutherland performances, whether it's
Oh
Don't
yeah.
Look Back or Invasion of the Body Snatchers. There's plenty out there. Even Animal House, you know, scenes are great in that, but
Hunger
not
Games.
this. This is not, woo, La Bamba.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Yeah.
so Virus was essentially a film pitch that was turned into a comic book and then reverse engineered to be back into a film script. From Hell, which is the next stop in our travels here, was very different. This is based on the graphic novel by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell. It has a very distinctive visual style, and top-notch cast with Johnny Depp and who remembers Heather Graham. Um,
I remember Heather Graham.
yeah, there was a time where she was like in every other film. There was
It's
like a
true.
2 year period where it's like crazy. Um, and this is a huge disappointment.
Mm,
But it's understandable. This was directed by the Hughes brothers, who are, you know, known for much more urban films. You know, they're
right.
African American directors. So I thought the choice of directors, it was inspired. The thing is, if you base it on the comic book, which is about Jack the Ripper, but is more about the social class structure and the
Hmm.
societal norms of the very end of the Victorian period. Um, the thing is, they were damned if they did, damned if they don't, because if you wanted to make something that was akin to that work, you know who Jack the Ripper is in 5 minutes. You
Yeah.
know, it's apparent in the narrative, and when you do have that, it's a black and white work. It's like a phone book when it's collected, and I think maybe in the atmosphere today that you could get away with a TV series based on this, especially after watching the first season of The Alienist. Um,
Hmm.
you know, that I think that would have been a very good team for this. But you know, as a who done it, it really isn't that. It's like, yeah, I know who done it. Um, there's more, and what's powerful about that story about who Jack the Ripper was the societal connections he had as
Hmm.
displayed in the book. And this is just a disappointment all around. But I really do think it was a situation where they could not make the graphic novel.
Yeah.
It shares the title from the graphic novel and the core story that it's around the investigation for the Jack the Ripper murders, and that's it.
Yeah, this movie, I had seen it and I hadn't read the graphic novel before. I knew that it was based on a graphic novel, which, I think most people who came to see this movie didn't really care what it was based on. I
Yeah.
mean, they came for Johnny Depp,
Yeah.
and he's competent in it. Like, everybody's pretty good at what they're doing, but again, the story is a little
If
bit
you
more
just called this
predictable.
Jack the Ripper, I wouldn't
Yeah.
have problems with it.
Yeah.
But for me, like From Hell was one of those works, along with the Golden Age by James Robinson and Paul Smith,
Mhm.
and Starman by James Robinson, and Supreme by Alan Moore, that got me back into reading comics regularly, along with some more conventional fare like Grant Morrison's JLA at the at the end of the 90s. And I was bound to be disappointed because you just couldn't make it at that time. I think you could make a television series with how things are structured now that would be much more akin to the book.
I agree with that. I think that would probably maybe be a good version, or a good way of returning to this story, and being able to do it justice, rather than putting it up on the big screen again. Because again, it's not a bad movie.
No,
everything about it is competent.
Yeah, it's not a hack film.
No.
There are even better Jack the Ripper films out there, but when you think, if you've ever experienced the source material, it's a shame. It's just a shame. But
it's harder, I guess.
You could not release a conventional film at the end of the 90s or the early 2000s where you knew who Jack the Ripper was 5 minutes in. You just couldn't.
No.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So we move on to the next entry in the list. From Hell was 2001. Blade 2, which we had mentioned, was 2002. And then in 2004, we had a comic book. It's based on a comic book that is based on film properties. So it's another full circle situation. And what I'm talking about in 2004 is the first Alien versus Predator film.
Yeah. Which I don't have the images for that one, but that's
okay. So this was one that was like, it barely, as far as I'm concerned, it barely qualified.
It's definitely
it's one of the entries here with an asterisk,
movie to comic book to then movie,
but it
based
wouldn't
on
exist without comic books. That was how the characters initially met. How the franchises merged was from the Dark Horse. It was initially wasn't it Dark Horse Presents? Wasn't it like short stories in that?
Yeah, there were, because there was a lot in Dark Horse Presents, and I forget what, there was one big one.
The Mask. The Mask came out of Dark Horse Presents. Mystery Men came out of Dark Horse Presents. Time Cop, I think, maybe was Time Cop. Yeah, so a lot of films came out of have a relation to Dark Horse Presents, but how they had the Predators versus the Xenomorphs, that all began in the comics, and there also was a sequel to this. Depending who you ask what it's titled, Aliens versus Predator Requiem, or AVPR, in 2007. So did want to mention that because it qualifies with an asterisk as
and the premises, the premise of the first one is pretty cool. They find an ancient pyramid in Antarctica, and of course it was part of Predators training facility where they would breed aliens to then release whatever on prehistoric Earth. But it contributed a lot to what became Alien and Predator lore.
Even though it's not considered canon.
Nope.
But it's also interesting if you do see the the Predator, the previews for the upcoming Predator movie,
Yes.
it's very clear that in that trailer that the Weyland Yutani Corporation is a presence.
Oh yeah.
So
Well, I
there
mean,
is.
Elle Fanning, I think, is
Yep.
she's a Weyland Yutani synth. So yeah, I think this is it's cool to mention.
Yeah.
Even though it kind of like is asterisks, like you said, but yeah, it contributed a lot to those movies. So if you're a big
Yeah.
Alien or Predator fan, thank the
So
comics, thank Dark Horse.
yep.
For
So
making one of these films.
2004, though, that wasn't the only comic book film. We had Blade Trinity, which we just talked about, and then we have the first film in a franchise which is very dear to Steve's heart. So I'll let him take it away with Hellboy.
Hellboy. So yeah, so Hellboy, of course, very near and dear to my heart. Love the series, love BPRD, love the whole concept. And I started out not being a fan of Hellboy comics back when it came out, and I'm kicking myself for not becoming a super fan at that time. But I wasn't reading horror comics when I was but a wee teeny bopper in the early '90s. So, Mike Mignola's creation here, Hellboy, was picked up. Was I guess something that Guillermo del Toro had been really wanting to do. And of course, he wanted to have Ron Perlman from the get-go. Wanted Ron Perlman as Hellboy, and he got his wish finally. Yet they had to shop it around so many times because nobody wanted to take it up for the name alone. They said you can't market that, not in the U.S. It has HE double hockey sticks. That's bad word. No, bad. But it actually. Somebody took a chance on it, and thank God they did, because it is a wonderful film. It does adapt the comics. Guillermo del Toro actually did write this one, and loosely based it on Seed of Destruction, which was
Right.
one of the first. Who did what?
He did the first one with Peter Briggs, and then the
Yeah.
Golden Army by himself in terms of script writing.
Well, the Golden Army, he actually worked with Mike Mignola on. Mike Mignola and
Mike
Christopher
Mignola's
Golden.
not credited.
Yeah, they did help with the.
It says story
script.
by Guillermo del Toro and Mike Mignola, screenplay by Guillermo del Toro. Okay.
Yeah. And Christopher
I bow
Golden too.
to your expertise in all things people.
And Christopher Golden too on the second one. But the first one was really Guillermo del Toro. I can't say his name the entire time, so like Del Toro. Really wanted to do this story, and so he presented a quick origin for Hellboy that is the perfect quintessential origin story. And then of course brought in the Nazis, which are always fun, and Rasputin, and really brought home the Agdru Jihad, which big part of Hellboy lore, but not too obscure or crazy for most moviegoers to understand. Giant Cthulhu-like or elder god-like creatures in the outer world. Hellboy's there to either usher them in or to stop them, and it sets up the really cool BPRD as a fun, interesting government agency. There's a lot of humor there, but there's also a lot of great horror elements. I mean, they bring back to life a rotting corpse, and Hellboy carries him on his back. You've got these hounds of hell. You've got, of course, Rasputin bringing elder gods down. It's got a lot of scary elements and a lot of great horror elements here.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody is scared of crazy Nazis, especially almost immortal TikTok, clockwork ones. Did a really great job there. Yeah. So I mean, just beautifully done.
So this is my copy.
Mm-hmm.
This is the director's cut. It's 3 discs with a booklet. I'd be really interested to see what the Blu-ray and 4K versions of this are like, because there's a lot of material in this version.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so the reason why there hasn't been an upgrade is I haven't really investigated.
So. Well, and I think Del Toro's look for this was a very interesting way of translating Mike Mignola's art. And I think to the detriment of later films, I think everybody wants just to continue to see Del Toro do Hellboy.
Mhm.
And so Hellboy 1 and 2, Golden Army, was a unique story, obviously, done with
That
the
one I
help of
do have
Mignola
on
and
Blu-ray.
Chris Roland. Yeah. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. It's got some
Yes,
really
and I
cool
think
moments.
it's also very important to note that both Hellboy and Hellboy 2: The Golden Army,
Mhm.
there's no CGI sets. Those are
No.
all standing physical sets,
Yep.
which is a rarity these days.
And the
If you
costuming, the
watch it through
character,
that lens, you'll be impressed.
yeah, and the creature design, and especially I think in the second one, the one that stands out the most is, of course, Hellboy's death, the
Mhm.
the creature of death, the angel of death that they capture. At one scene, also, of course, also played by Doug Jones, who plays pretty much every kind of strangely shaped creature, including Abe Sapien.
Mhm.
Um, so after Hellboy 1 and Hellboy 2, which came out I think in
Yeah. Can we
2008.
just stay on Hellboy 2 for a
Oh,
second?
sure. Yeah, yeah.
I didn't dislike it,
Mhm.
but it felt unnecessary,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
I mean, it's what can you do after you've already.
It felt like they were committed to a sequel, "Let's make a
Yeah.
sequel," and they're just what it felt, and especially this is really funny coming from Del Toro,
Right.
um, it felt like a job, it felt like they were doing a
Mm.
job, and, when you see the craft that went into it with the costumes and the thing, clearly that wasn't their intent, but there is that feel to it of, like, it feels like more of a sequel than a necessary Hellboy story. Like this was
Right.
a story that was necessary to tell.
And I think probably and if you've read a lot of the Hellboy comics and the BVRD comics, then you would I think most people would agree there because
Mhm.
it doesn't really fit
Yeah.
in with the universe that Mignola created around this character and these characters. There's an attempt. There's the Fae do play a part in Hellboy. Some of the actions and some of the creatures are very Hellboyish, but
Mhm.
the whole concept itself just doesn't really isn't very much from that universe, which is unfortunate because again, it is a gorgeous movie, and it's still Del Toro, and it's still Ron Perlman, and still like the original cast, coming back for the sequel. So um, they did the first two. There wasn't a third one for a very long time. There were two animated films, and I just kind of put them up here. They
With the
were
same, with very importantly with the same cast.
Same cast, yeah,
Voices.
same cast as voices, which was great. So Blood and Iron and Sword of Storms, and they were both, both of these films were on Cartoon Network and then went straight to video essentially right
Mhm.
afterwards. So they did not get a theatrical release, and so for years there really wasn't anything until 2019, and it took that long because Del Toro kind of didn't really want to continue with it, and it just took a long time to get people shopping around for the right script, and then of course you had to find the right actor to play Hellboy because people didn't want to go with Ron Perlman because he was a little older. And
Well, also Perlman said like he just couldn't do a makeup job like that anymore.
oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
so
I,
intense.
I
It's so
I
much
remember
work, and it's
interviews with
very
that was like if you wanted him to do it, you had to pay him a lot of money
yeah,
because he's had you know three very notable roles that were makeup heavy, and he was
yeah,
tired of it, and I completely understand that.
100%. And also pay for the rehab bills afterwards from all like the physical work. It's
Yeah.
um but they finally found David Harbour. So they put David Harbour in this, uh, and he looks freaking amazing in the suit, and the makeup and everything looks great. The one thing I have to say about the 2019 Hellboy movie, it looks great.
Mhm.
And this is the other thing that's also really kind of frustrating for me too. As somebody who reads a lot of Hellboy, uh, it was probably one of the most story accurate
Mhm.
like versions of this character they could do. They had characters that were deep, deep, deep in Hellboy lore that were a huge part of the Hellboy like long long form storytelling. Nimue, the Blood Queen, or the Queen of Blood, Alice, the Gruagach, the Arthurian legacy, all of this stuff, crazy deep lore,
Mm-hmm.
only makes sense if you've been reading it for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
They throw it in this movie, and I think most people just were like, what?
Yeah.
What's going on? What is happening here?
Mm-hmm.
One of the coolest things, and again, it's been making the rounds. If it's shown up on your FYP, your For Your page on TikTok or YouTube or Instagram, I would not be surprised. And it is the hell creatures coming out and destroying London. Beautiful sequence. Again, people who were watching this movie were like scratching their heads trying to figure out what was happening, what was going on. And what do you mean he's a descendant of King Arthur? What is that, Excalibur? How does he have Excalibur? What's going on?
I did
So,
not
yeah.
see this in the film because, again, it was not a substantial box office hit, and its tenure in the theaters was not very long. I first saw this on a plane.
Oh,
What a weird movie to watch on a plane.
very weird. Like the whole Wild Hunt thing with the
And this
giant.
was, this was, we're talking 2019, and they still had films presented by the, by the airplane company, by the airline, So it was one of those, and I just came off and it's like, it's not the worst film I've ever seen, but it was loaded. I think that's a good way of putting it. It's overloaded. And it's just a weird film to watch on a plane.
Absolutely.
Weird. Yeah.
And if you were like the majority of audiences were expecting the same kind of group of characters that you had seen in the Del Toro Hellboy movies, you would be horribly disappointed. Because really the only one that carries over is Hellboy himself. Everybody else is unique to this film. All really important for Hellboy comics lore. But again, nobody understood what was going on in this movie. To this detriment. Like I enjoyed myself because I knew what I was watching, but again, I understand that it's too much. So of course they followed it up, and again, this didn't get a big release, but they focused it down on the latest film, starring Jack Kesey as Hellboy, and made it just the Effie Kolb Crooked Man.
Yeah, and this one we talked about, there was no theatrical release in the States.
No, not at all. It made very little money overseas, because again, I think it's too small, but it's also very American of a story. It's too small, I think, for people who were looking for a Hellboy movie. So, I enjoyed it a lot because it was very close with a few major changes to the story of the Crooked Man and Effie Kolb. But Hellboy, I'm hoping someday it comes back and somebody can make a great movie.
Okay, so as we said, the first Hellboy was in 2004. The following year, we finally get another DC property, and that's in the form of Constantine with Keanu Reeves.
Yep, Constantine, and I do have an image here. And I also
image of him like strutting. Yeah.
Yep. I really enjoyed this movie. I had not read any Hellblazer comics before I saw this movie, so I was like, "Wow, this is really cool. I want to go and read."
That's
some
weird
Hellblazer.
because you're such a Vertigo guy.
Well, I had seen this is 2005.
Yeah,
that it came out, and I had not read any comics, like any like big two published comics for a while.
It was when you were reading Sandman. It was around.
Yes, he was, and he was in Sandman, but again, he wasn't a major character in Sandman. He showed up a couple times, and that was in reference, but it was not really something I knew of him, but I didn't read him. And I enjoyed this movie for what it was.
Yeah,
I think
it's a very Malibu take on Constantine.
Whoa! Yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
in a way that Keanu Reeves, like, it is pure Keanu Reeves,
and it's interesting because it's actually fairly faithful to the comic. Even more so than the TV series with Matt Ryan. It's
Yeah.
actually there's elements that are very, very faithful, particularly to the Dangerous Habits storyline. Um,
Yeah. But
so
yeah, I
yeah, it's a strange little film that is enjoyable,
it
and
is.
it looks like there are indications that we may get more Keanu as Constantine. Um,
True. And the one thing I
that
do have
would
to
be
say
like
about
an Elseworlds film that comes through DC
yeah.
Studios. Yeah.
And the one thing I do have to say about this particular film is that it has legs. It is a cult hit. It wasn't a huge blockbuster when it came
Mhm.
out. It did really well, but it didn't
Yeah.
do like amazing numbers. But it has remained popular and
Mhm.
has been rediscovered multiple times by younger fans. So it's pretty cool. But just for people watching, if you aren't familiar with the difference between Constantine and the John Constantine from the Hellblazer Vertigo series, this is Keanu Reeves. Here is John Constantine Hellblazer. Kind of a very different take on this character.
Yeah.
Going from Malibu to the original, which is very Cockney London, you
Yeah.
know, blonde.
Yeah.
Blonde is the big thing here. Um,
Yeah.
but
Physically
but
based
yeah,
on Sting. Um,
yes.
you have to keep that in mind. The character first appeared in 1984.
Hmm.
Um, and
As a former
they've
punk
maintained
rocker
that look.
slash yeah,
They've maintained that look, except for Keanu, like I said,
for
and I
Keanu,
think
yeah.
it's I don't even say it disparagingly. It's a very Malibu take on.
Yeah.
on
And it is a fun movie.
yeah, and
I
it
think
has a great pace.
oh
It
yeah.
like there's not a wasted scene in it. Who
Tilda
directed this?
Swinton.
Who was the director for this? Francis Lawrence.
Yeah, Francis Lawrence.
I don't know what else they did.
Yeah.
Um,
It also has like Jamin Hanchu plays Papa Midnight, and you're like, oh
yeah,
wow, they threw this guy in too.
yeah,
But you do have Tilda Swinton as Gabriel, and is
mhm,
fantastic in this.
yeah,
This is one of her great characters, and Peter Stormare as Satan, as
mhm,
Lucifer. It's pretty cool.
Lucifer.
Um, yeah.
Okay,
So
so Constantine was 2005. This next film I can't talk about because I actually have never seen it, which is weird because
really,
I have the original graphic novel and I've always appreciated Steve Niles as a personality, but
hmm
I have never seen 2007's 30 Days of Night.
which is again kind of too bad. I'm not going to say like, oh my god, you haven't seen it.
Yeah,
Um,
I've just never gotten around to it.
I really enjoyed this. Again, this was one of my 31 days of horror.
Mhm.
I believe last year. Um, it's vampires, so of course vampires always do well.
Yeah.
But it's a cool take on vampires, and I think just making them intelligent yet also feral and bestial,
Mhm.
and extremely
But
cruel.
I assume not in the 28 Days Later way.
No,
Okay.
this is no. These vampires are, they're intelligent in a way that they are planners.
Mhm.
They're hunters, and their prey is stuck in the small town, formerly known as Barrow, Alaska. I can't pronounce the current name of it. It starts with a U. Um, but it was formerly known as Barrow, Alaska, and they're famous for having almost a full month, well, 30 days of night every winter, and 30 days
Mhm.
of daytime, 30 days of full 24-hour sun in the summer. But this, of course, the town is essentially more or less wiped out
Mhm.
by these vampires, with the exception of a few surviving holdouts led by Josh Hartnett. And so they have to figure out a way to destroy the vampires and survive till sunlight. But it's a really good action movie. It's a good horror movie, and a great concept. How close it is to the comic, I couldn't tell you because I have not read the book. So you've read it. I
I've
haven't.
read the book and enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't read it, but I've seen the movie. So just so you know, there was a sequel to this.
Yes, this was and this was um I mean, you can just even like this graphic just screams of direct to video.
Oh yeah, yeah. 30 Days of Night, Dark Days, and so I have not seen it either,
yeah,
but I don't think they could really top the original,
yeah.
the original film
But
in the theater.
at
So
some point, I will watch it, and I think this has
yeah,
kind of put this more on the top of the stack than
yeah,
normal. So
I recommend it.
yeah,
I think it's a good time. So
okay. All right,
yeah.
so the theatrical 30 Days a Night was in 2007. AVP Requiem, however the fuck you want to pronounce it, is 2007. Another movie that came out in 2007. I think this is the last franchise we're going to talk about in detail tonight. Was
Mhm.
Ghost Rider with
Ghost
Nicolas
Rider.
Cage. Oh
I, Nicolas Cage as a Marvel horror superhero.
yeah. Um, it's one of those movies, and there's many of them. Most notably,
Mhm.
Peggy Sue Got Married, where Nicolas Cage is acting in a completely different film from the other cast members. Um,
Yeah.
he adopts a Southern accent.
Mhm.
You always like that Italian food. Um, it's fun. I can tell
It
you
is a
that it's
fun movie.
fun. You know,
This is a fun movie.
and it did well enough to warrant a sequel.
Yeah.
Which is whoa, whoa. Ooh, this is rough. This was rough. Um, I don't
I
even
could
know.
not tell you what the sequel is about.
Yeah,
I cannot
this is
remember.
as I said before about the second Crow film. Same situation. I watched it. I own
Yeah.
it. I can't tell you what happens in there and with any distinct.
Yeah.
The main thing I remember is it's in Europe. That's the main thing I remember about it.
Oh, is it? Oh
It's in Europe.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Because
I
remember
feel
that's
so
where he's
bad
hiding
about
out
it.
after because of the bounty hunters
Oh,
after him.
right. Right.
Yeah.
I
Um.
mean, this is a movie that people worked hard on. They put their heart and soul
Yeah.
in this movie. They put in their hours, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, and I apologize to all of them. I can't remember a goddamn thing about it.
And I think the problem with the Ghost Rider films is the villains are so dull. Um,
Yeah.
and Ghost Rider does have some interesting villains in his comic series. Some are goofy, like the eye guy. Some are goofy, but um, it just the adversary element to it just doesn't work.
Hmm.
But the first one is fun. The first one is fun. I actually do think if you ever made a Ghost Rider film again, because this was a situation in the 1970s. Three of Marvel's new characters were clearly based on real life people.
Hmm.
Luke Cage is clearly Muhammad Ali.
Right.
Ghost Rider is clearly Evil Knievel, and Shang-Chi is clearly Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Give me Evil Knievel as Ghost Rider. Set it in the 70s, and just run with it because there could be a really, really, really fun and I think memorable movie. I think you could do something with Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
The first one's fun. I mean, the first one's fun.
Yeah.
Second one, it's like I saw it.
I
Yeah,
saw it. I couldn't tell you what it's about, but I saw it.
yeah,
Yeah, that's I feel the same way for that. And Ghost Rider is definitely cool because you can, very similar to Blade.
mhm.
You can make any kind of evil adversary
Yeah.
as
And
long as
and
they're
also he
interesting.
can interact with the Marvel universe in
Yeah.
general. And I know we've had the Robbie Reyes version, who it started in Agents of Shield
Hmm.
for the MCU. Um, I still think they could do more with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe even doing a Spirits of Vengeance movie might be
And
the way to
and it
go.
was a
With
shame because apparently Nick Cage really did want to do Deadpool and Wolverine, but there's just the time frames just did not
just
work.
didn't work. That's
Um,
too bad.
Yeah. So we just have a few more films that we're just gonna like mention effectively in passing. In
Yeah.
2014, there was I Frankenstein, which is based on an online graphic novel retelling of Frankenstein. The main thing I remember about this is that's one of the funniest episodes of the Movie Bears podcast because I don't think any of them really liked it. And there's just some very funny lines, so I would refer people to that. At some point, I'll see it. And then
now I want to go back and listen to it
yeah,
again. I need
in
to
2016 there was a film Abattoir, which was based on a radical. If people remember, there was an imprint called Radical Comics, Radical Press, which was when we talked about Malibu. I mean, it was just basically a front to do IP development for films. And this was one of the stories. It was a horror story. I've never seen it. The Hellboy reworking with David Harbour was in 2019, which we just talked about. Morbius, which I know you saw. I own it. I still haven't watched it, and this has been out a couple of years.
No rush.
Should watch it at some point, right?
No rush.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those movies that you were waiting for to come out for a long time, but then, of course, because of the pandemic and because of other delays, it finally came out, and I don't think the expectations anybody had any idea what this was going to be. Yeah, it was an interesting take on the character, and I'll leave it at that.
So at some point, I'll watch it. And then that brings us almost up to current day, the Crow reboot in 2024 that Steve talked about. And in terms of stuff that's on the horizon, we do have a DC Studios film next year, which is already in production, which has been bannered as body horror, and that's the Batman villain Clayface, his standalone movie. So
and
we do have at least one coming out that we can look forward to.
Yeah, and normally I wouldn't think of a Batman movie, Batman related movie as a horror movie, but some of his villains, some of his main villains, are all about like fear and horror, like Scarecrow, fear and horror. Clayface, it usually played a little bit, sometimes goofy, sometimes like really serious.
Yeah.
But honestly, body horror.
Sometimes there's a character trying to reform.
Yeah. But
it's not like that this time around.
No, this sounds like it could be really cool.
And Blade for the MCU is just caught in development hell. So someday we may see another Blade, but I'm certain that it's not the end of horror-based comic book films. No. Swamp Thing is eyed for Gods and Monsters arc in the DC
somewhere in the next couple of years is that potential there. So I'm on TV, obviously there's a lot of options if you want to go back and look at horror adaptations. And like I had mentioned, sort of, Creepshow is one of those weird ones that's come full circle.
And it was when you think of TV, I mean, you have The Walking Dead from DC. You have Sandman and Dead Boy Detectives. There's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So.
And Marvel Zombies, of course, just came out on Disney Plus. I did watch all 4 of those episodes, and it is
wonderful Werewolf by Night standalone special.
Werewolf by Night, also now in color. That
stuff. Yeah,
there's some good stuff. But yeah, for films, there's some good history there.
Yeah.
So
I don't think there's any of the films we talked about. I don't think are rise to the level of a great film for me. I'm just like, no, I wouldn't say any of them are great films. But there are some solid, definitely great popcorn films.
Yeah.
In the mix.
I would say that Hellboy is a great film. Like the first one.
I wouldn't say Hellboy is a great film. The closest one for me, I don't know. Let me see. No.
Clearly Return of Swamp Thing.
No. But the riff tracks.
Now that I can get behind.
Yeah. I think honestly, maybe just because the visuals I find so interesting, and because it did lay groundwork, of all these films, I probably would go with the first Blade for me.
Yeah. Blade was.
Yeah.
The first and the second Blade were so good.
Yeah.
The third one was fun.
Yeah.
And Ryan Reynolds with a beard and shirtless is, I approve.
Mm-hmm.
And of course Dominic Purcell. But yeah,
Yeah.
and Parker Posey. Parker Posey was in that too. Like Parker Posey's in Blade Trinity.
But if you are looking for like some like, you know, Halloween fare, I think we've given you a lot here tonight.
Plenty.
Yeah,
definitely plenty.
Well, this was fun. This is, you know, Bear
lovely.
Cave of Terror adjacent, and, you know, kind of, you know, something we created out of necessity.
Yeah.
So this was an interesting, enjoyable night. Thank you, Steve.
Well, thank you.
I feel like I'm
This was
playing
a
in
lot
your
of fun.
sandbox a little bit, but you probably could use some of this footage for Bear Cave, and at least in terms of the shorts too.
Maybe. I mean, one
I
of the
would
things
like
that
to see like I would have liked to see the shorts about calling like a very Malibu version of Constantine.
your wish is my command. Just hold up. I might be putting that out this coming week.
All right.
Bill calls Constantine the Malibu version of the character.
All right, so we're going to start wrapping up this episode of the Comic Book Bears, and when we wrap an episode up, we have two final destinations. The first of which is where we show off our Geek Gets, things we've gotten over the last fortnight that are geeky in some way, and it's a little bit of show and tell. Sometimes Steve has stuff, sometimes he doesn't. Steve, do you have stuff tonight?
I do. I actually have books this time.
Okay.
Specifically DC Compact. I have been really enjoying getting these. And I just got a set of 3, some of the latest ones. So Wonder Woman, the first New 52 like collection, Batman, Arkham Asylum, and of course one of my favorites. And again, I think I have like 2 versions of this already, but the New Frontier. And people have complained about these being it's presented in a much smaller format, and so it's you can't support something like this.
It's kind of there in the title there, dudes.
It's compact. I fully 100% support this because these are no more than $10, so excellent price point. They're easy to carry around and are easy to gift and get somebody interested in reading different comics. There's so many different options that are out there for different properties, different characters, different books. And compacts, digest size, don't knock them. I mean, this is definitely something I recommend for people to pick up for people that you want to read.
I think
comics.
DC has done, because the absolutes are, they're just out of most people's price ranges.
Yeah. They're huge.
We have friends that, have a few bucks that get them. But I think DC, between the compact and also the DC library, which kind of has taken the spot of almost like a midpoint between Archives and Showcase Presents.
The DC Finest.
DC Finest, sorry. DC
Finest.
That's I got my first copy of one, which was the Crypto volume, the Superboy Crypto volume, and it's just really nice having everything in chronological order. And, it's real nice. So I do think that DC's programs, their graphic novel programs, are pretty on the money. Speaking of DC, I've mentioned this almost on every episode over the summer, and it's still going. Me with the slowest collecting ever of a line of toys. Yes, I did get more Spin Master Superman. I got Epic Strike Superman.
Epically striking.
Yes, and I also got Epic Strike Mr. Terrific.
Epically striking too.
They joined previously purchased Epic Strike Hammer, or more fully Hammer of Boravia. So these are discounted at Target right now to $4.95. If somebody finds the Guy Gardner Green Lantern Epic Strike, I ask you, please shuffle your ass to the register and I'll cover you for the $5 because I can't find them over here.
Oh, man.
I'm just hoping that I have the Superman Kaiju, Slime Kaiju coming on Sunday. So I'll show that off in the next one. That's a pre Prime Day deal at Amazon. But I'm still waiting for that set, the Luther's Lab set with the 7 action figures, to come down to sell through price at Target. It's a Target exclusive. It's got to, because there's just tons of them still in stores. They got to discount at some point, because right now it's still like $45 or something. So. And in terms of a non-Superman Spin Master get, as I had mentioned before, I hung out with principally my friend Glenn, but also some other members of the GCDC group and extended family on Saturday, where we went record shopping to a store up in Wayne, New Jersey, Sound Exchange. And I fully expected that my next Beatles box set was going to be the anthology box set that's coming out at the end of the year. But they had, for an excellent price, the box set of from Bear Family from 2001, the Beatles with Tony Sheridan, Beatles Bop Hamburg days. The first time the Beatles were in a recording studio properly were for Polydor Records, where they backed fellow Liverpudlian Tony Sheridan, who was also on the Star Club circuit in Hamburg. This has every possible variation of the 8 tracks that they recorded, also including another one where they suspect they're on the recording, but the logs don't bear that out. And the real nice thing about this, apart from the disc, is that it contains a beautiful hardcover book with like just an unbelievable discography of every variation that came out in the 60s up until like the mid 70s or so.
Wow.
And goes through the logs, any available pictures from the Hamburg area are in this book. So it's just a beautiful book to go along with this package. So I'm very glad I made the trip on that basis. Yeah, so another Beatles box set, unexpected, and not from Apple, but that's gonna join all of them over there. All right. Well, shelf. When we end an episode of the Comic Book Bears, we have one final destination. We've had it on every episode of our show, and that's something we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar here, where we woof at something which may be comic book or comic book related. Might be a film or a TV program, even a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, or potentially viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
So my woof of the week goes out to the Bookmarks Festival of Books and Authors that took place in Winston-Salem here, North Carolina, last weekend. It was a 4-day festival where a lot of authors were invited to come and do book signings, do panels, and just make themselves available for the Bookmarks team. And Bookmarks is a nonprofit bookstore, independent bookstore here in Winston-Salem that is excellent. I'm a long-term patron of it since I moved here. And they have some really cool swag. I got one of their tote bags, and that is their mascot for the book festival, Bruce the bear. And he's looking pretty cute, even though he's miffed for some reason. But there's just so much great stuff here. I got to meet several authors, listen to some wonderful talks, and picked up some pretty cool books. So including a collection of North Carolina haunting ghost stories and horror stories. Also picked up a recent novella from ML Rio, Graveyard Shift. That's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to reading that. And then also, for Murderino fans, Whack Job, A History of Axe Murder by Rachel McCarthy James, who I actually met and talked with, and she signed the book. But she is hilarious. And this is actually exactly what it says. It is a history of axe murder from prehistory to now, and why it's a very interesting way of killing people. So enjoy. She also was a contributor to Man on the Train, if you're familiar with that book, about a serial killer in the early 1900s who rode the train around the U.S. and killed potentially over 100 victims with an axe. So, yeah, that was my wolf.
Okay. All right. So for my wolf of the week, I'm going to ask Steve to put up the graphic that I provided. If you would be so kindly to do that before I start talking about it.
It is cute.
Here it comes. Here it comes. Are we ready? Here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes. Boom. Into the Void, a Hulu original docuseries, which is subtitled Life, Death, and Heavy Metal. It provides 8, as it says there, 8 music legends, countless brutal truths. I was able to watch the first 5 episodes of this 8-episode series. So the ones that I covered were the ones on the death metal group Death. There's a punk group called Death, Judas Priest Trial, and a group I did not know about at all called NME, out of a pre-grunge Seattle. I also watched the Randy Rhoads episode and also the episode about Wendy O. Williams from the Plasmatics. If you enjoy the dark side of series, whether it be wrestling or football or any of those versions, there's a lot of similarities in how things are structured. But it's in a lot of ways much more poignant than some of the dark side episodes can be. Got 3 episodes to go. I hope there's more to this, because God knows there's more stories to tell out of the denizens of the heavy metal world, and it treats the subject matter, it treats the subjects and the genre itself with a hell of a lot of respect, without being sensational. And the 5 of the 8 episodes I've watched have all been very worthwhile. Looking forward to catching the remainder. That's on Hulu. Into the Void, Life, Death, and Heavy Metal. And that's my wolf of the week.
Cool. I do need to watch that, because it is on my list.
Yeah, and like I said, I know
Dark Side fan.
We watch Dark Side, and could care less about the people that they cover. Maybe we care about them afterwards. But this is it's very much cut from the same cloth. And Steve, I'm certain you will enjoy this. I'm certain you will. All right. Well, that's another episode of the Comic Book Bears. A little deviation tonight, talking about films, but still with the comic book umbilical cord attached to it. And as I said, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on most of the social media platforms as Comic Book Bears. On Facebook, we are Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can do so through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and almost any of the other major podcasting platforms. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you've joined us tonight live, thank you. If you were watching us later on our YouTube channel, thank you. Please like and subscribe. So until next time, which unfortunately will not be in 2 weeks, but maybe in 3 weeks. Until that time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
If you're listening to the audio version, you're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care.